And we're live.
Hey, Dan.
Hey, Kat, how are you doing?
I'm good. How about you?
I'm doing great, thanks. Looks like you're coming to us from the offices down there in Woodinville.
Office, the Woodinville Windermere office. Yes, downtown Woodinville. Yes, and it's hot outside for us Western Washingtonians.
It is. It's been pretty warm the last few days. Great day to take a
I've
walk.
been melting on a daily basis.
Well, let's jump into the numbers. It looks interesting. Um, we were just talking before we went on that we're kind of splitting up the Memorial Day weekend, so the numbers are a little bit slack because of the weekend that we had here 2 weeks ago.
But they
And
are even the most recent numbers. So the numbers where we're looking at how many listings came on the market last week versus how many listings went pending. Like for King County, we had 556 listings come on the market, Dan, but we only had 440 go pending. So what that says to me is that we're actively increasing inventory right now. And so with Snohomish County, same thing. We had 219 listings, and these are single family residential, not new construction and not condos. 219 came on the market and only 156 went pending. And so that's a pretty good disparity, and that is causing an increase in inventory. So that's making MSI go up. MSI in King County is 1.7 months, and in Snohomish County, it's 1.5, so 1.5 months of inventory. And so that starts to look like a softer market, a little bit better buyer market for sure. So better time for buyers to get out there and make offers, a little bit easier for them. We could talk about the multiple offer situation as well. So of the offers that got turned in during the last 7 days, this is interesting. 31% involved multiple offers.
mm-hmm.
In Snohomish County, it was 26%. So only about a quarter of the contracts that got turned in last week during the last 7 days in Snohomish County were a result of multiple offers. And so, there's just a heck of a good chance for buyers right now to get out there and make an offer on a home that they'd like to purchase, and there's a good chance they won't have to compete. So
Well, I will tell you, I was talking with one of my folks this morning. They're kind of in the market, and they're kind of getting back into the market right
yeah,
now. And I'd met with them about 2-3 months ago, and so anyway, really interesting. I think we talked about it before, but with the market the way it is, what you're describing, a little bit slower, you can combine the zero down payment assistance program, with a 2-1 buy down. Ends up getting you a 5.75% rate. You've got that buy down basically over the course of the next year, and you can refinance out of it, get a low payment rate to begin with, or relatively low, and then be able to hopefully be able to refinance out of it. I mean, if we're not refinancing
at some
out of
point, right? Yeah.
at some point, yeah. So, you've got 2 full years of the 2-1 buy down. It's a great program with zero down. And the reason I mention it is that right now is, it's a pretty favorable time to be buying for the most part, right? I mean, we kind of talked about it last week, and in a lot of ways, I'm just talking as a loan originator. So, as a loan originator, there's a lot more ways you can structure a deal. Let's just say you're slashing prices. House been on I don't want to call it slashing, but maybe just easing off of,
reducing price a little bit. Yeah, because
price
they've
reduction.
Been on the market for a while. Sellers been on the market a while, and they've made a couple of price adjustments. And so, we could take a house that's listed for, $750 and say maybe they started way too high, and they're kind of following the market down as we start to soften a little bit here. So maybe they've reduced price by 50 or 75.
Well, and so I'm just going to take a nice round number, 5%, somewhere in that vicinity. You might serve the seller might serve themselves better by actually offering a or a seller's concession, because you've got a lot of folks that might be in the market.
Oh, you mean they should offer a 2-1 buy down?
Offer a 2-1 buy down, plus maybe instead of a 5% price reduction, offer a 5% selling concession, because that way you can basically, it's nice and tidy. You can offer a 2-1 buy down, lower payments, and you're basically going to be able to pay for all the closing costs.
Or a good percentage of them. Yeah.
Or a good percentage of them. That's right. And so it's an interesting tactic. I think it's a very effective tactic. But you would know better than me. But from a loan officer perspective, it opens up the number of folks that would be able to buy, because one of the biggest hindrances that I see on my end of the of the stick, so to speak, is a lot of folks just don't quite have enough down payment money.
Right.
Now that doesn't, and the thing is, a lot of these we call them entry level houses, they're just so expensive. I mean, a $600,000 house, we kind of shrug off, whatever. I don't want to minimize it, but it's kind of the norm these days. And at the same time,
it's almost entry level in our area.
It is, and it's really kind of shocking.
House under 600.
Yeah, and so for $600,000, it's kind of eye opening. It's that is an entry level. I'm trying not to minimize this stuff, right? I mean, but it's true in our area. 600,000. Yeah, it is kind of entry level.
You're lucky to be able to get a 3-bedroom, 2-bath Rambler for 600. It just depends on where you're at. You're definitely not going to do it in Bothell or Woodinville.
Right.
You got to get out there to South Everett or into Snohomish or
But for a lot of people, that is a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so I just think it's an interesting approach to be able to provide more customers with an opportunity to purchase a home, and maybe help on the sell side, open up the listing to more people. So just an idea, just kind of throwing things out.
But, yeah, it's hard. It's hard when you are talking about reducing price or offering concessions, because obviously the price reduction, that's a number, right? And that could appeal to someone who did not qualify before, but now would. And when you're offering a 2-1 buy down in the verbiage or in the comments for the listing, the marketing remarks, it's not something that it's not going to translate to a different search.
Right.
So,
right.
If you're listed for, let's say, 750 and you end up dropping to 700 at a certain point, you might be catching a whole new bucket of buyers, right? Because now you're down there to the 700 price point. And when you are pricing properties, you're trying to price on the major price points if you can, because buyer searches are always set up from like 650 to 700 or 650 to 750. That's just the way that the Zillows and the Redfins and the typical, house hunting search engines work, is from the major price points. They don't do 639 to 651. It's always the 600 to 650 or 600 to 700. And so it's nice to hit those when you can as a seller, because it increases your exposure on both sides. But that's the reason, though, you don't see a lot of people just offering right out the gate a 2-1 buy down, because that doesn't translate instantly into a different search parameter. So
that makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's something that you guys, though, as buyers, you can use. Let's say the seller has been on the market for 60 days or more, and maybe less than that. But, people, it just depends on where they've been and if they've dropped price or not. And if they have any inherent challenges where they were expecting to be on the market for a while. But if you run across a seller that feels like maybe they had started way too high and they've come down significantly in price, but they haven't dropped price in the last few weeks, there might be a real incentive for that seller to go ahead and talk about, providing you with a 2-1 buy down, or you ask them, right? So ask your lender, talk to your lender, find out how much that would be. And then you're going to ask the seller for concessions on your financing addendum to credit you whatever amount that 2-1 buy down is going to cost you. And so that's one way you can negotiate with a seller that has been on the market for a while. You're not going to get that out of a seller that just came on the market, though. So the first 7 or 14 days, it's pretty realistic to expect nearly full price if you do get an offer. There's not going to be a lot of negotiating.
So. Right. That's right. Yeah.
And that's fair. And that's fair because most people, when they go on the market, they do feel like that they should get an offer fairly quickly. So unless they just egregiously overpriced and they didn't listen to their broker, or just don't know what's happening in the marketplace. So, but most brokers have some kind of understanding as to what's going on out there, whether they know statistics or not. You can watch pricing and how quickly homes are going off the market. It helps to have statistics on your side, though.
That's right.
Well, it serves me well.
Speaking of statistics, how about if we jump into the stats?
Let's do it. Yeah, let's do it. Let's see. So King County, so 33% of sellers got under contract in the first 7 days on the market if they listed between the Sunday before Memorial Day and May 31st. So, and that number is going to be somewhat impacted by the Memorial Day weekend because a lot of people were out of town, right? That Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and maybe got back into town and headed right straight back to work and didn't have as much time maybe for house hunting. And my data goes from Sunday to Saturday. So it's not going to include a lot of home shoppers on Saturday where maybe they found a place they like and then they made an offer on Sunday or they didn't get mutual until Sunday. So this is, so I think it looks a lot softer. The 33% is pretty soft, but that number will probably increase a little bit next week, the following week. And then 44% of sellers got under contract within the first 2 weeks on the market. And that was before, but that did include the week before Memorial Day in that one too. So both of these numbers are maybe a little bit weaker than what they will be going forward. Although the market overall is softening a tad, it's definitely still a seller's market. When you've got 1 in 3 sellers going off the market in the first 7 days, that's a strong seller's market still. However, that second number, the 2-week data, is we're no longer over 50%. So you can't just assume that if you don't make it the first week, you're going to make it the second week. So, but we had 19% of sellers of the closed sales for the past 30 days. 19% of sellers got 5% or more over asking price, which is pretty good. I mean, that's a lot of money when you think about that. That's on a price tag of $1 million, which, the average sales price of a home in King County is far over $1 million, and it's nearly $1 million in Snohomish County. You've got, if 20% is going to be like, 20% of sellers getting 5% over list. So 5% is going to be like $50,000 on $1 million. So that's a good chunk of change. And you got almost 20% of sellers getting that. So that's pretty cool. And it goes up from there, right? So when I look at my data here in King County, we had 10% of sellers get 10% or more over. So on $1 million house, it's $100,000 extra. Oof, that's nice. But only 3% got 15% or more over, and the numbers get really small after that. But we were mentioning earlier too that 31% of contracts that were turned in last week. So this is brand new data. This is not old. It's this last 7 days. 31% of contracts that got turned in included multiple offers. And also 36% of those contracts had inspection contingencies and 60% included a financing addendum. So the inspection contingency is not as big a deal when it comes to looking at our data right now, just because a lot of sellers are, providing a seller procured inspection report to the buyer before they make an offer. And that accounts for quite a bit of that, right? So this buyers aren't necessarily just flat out waiving their inspection when there is no inspection. I think most buyers are trying to be frugal about that and wise, because I don't think it's a good idea. Anyway, and then it looks like 60% are able to keep their financing in play. And I think it's probably 20% cash out there anyway. So most buyers are able to keep their financing contingency, which is good. So But I think that's interesting. And then 1.7 months supply of inventory, and that's just been gradually going up all spring, you know. So
Yeah, we seem to have bought. When did we bond? Back in February?
yeah, I think it was back. I think it was that far back. Where were we? Let's see. So that's November. Let's look at January here. We were 1.3 months in January. Let me look and see if it went down from there. It did. It started going down. And by, let's see, we were at 0.9 months supply on the 11th of February. So I think, Daniel, I think you're right. I think that was low. And then the next week we went up to 1 month supply. And Snohomish at that point was down to 0.8 months. So that second week in February is where our month supply of inventory was just about the lowest for the year.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think last year for King County, we had 1 week, if I remember correctly, we got down to 0.6, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, the previous last year was a better year overall. And if you stack that data on top of each other, look at last year's data over this year's data. Last year was a better seller's market overall. But there were also less listings on the market. But another fun fact, there were also more buyers, which is really weird, which is why we have what's going on right now, which is a bit more of a softening market this year at this time than we had last year.
Right.
And so not to scare anybody, because it's not anything to be scared of. It's just a fact. And it's ever so slight, right? So buyer going out there and making offers, if you were out there in March or April, you were probably running into competition about half the time. Right. And now you're going to be looking at running into competition between 25 and 30% of the time. So it gets a little easier, when you don't have to compete, because then you're not paying over asking. So, which none of us really want to do. And right now, you guys, also in the market, we've baked in the cake now, the increase for the year. Right. So our pricing right now is at the top, and some people have overshot that, which is why you're going to start to see some houses sitting on the market even longer. So, and those people will be having to reduce price at a certain point. And hence we'll see the summer market start to come back a little bit price wise.
Well, let's jump over to Snohomish.
Talk about Snohomish. All right, let's look at Snohomish. Oh, I guess we got to get out of the February data. Probably better jump back over to the June data. So 1.5 months supply of inventory for Snohomish County. That's starting to get up there a little bit for Snohomish, because they were down to 0.8 in February. So we're almost doubled supply of inventory. We had 37% of sellers get under contract within the first 7 days on the market. But that, again, included the Sunday, Monday of Memorial Day weekend. And so I think that number still is a little light in the loafers. I think next week will be hopefully pick up a little bit. And then 42% of sellers got under contract within the first 14 days on the market. And that was May 11th through May 24th, also including the week before the Memorial Day holiday. So hopefully those numbers pick up a little bit, because they have been kind of continually sagging. So still, like I said, still a good seller's market. Just getting a lot easier for buyers for sure. And buyers, a great tip is, if you want to avoid competing, go out there on the holiday weekend. So Snohomish County only had 17% of contracts turned in over that week of that holiday weekend. Only 17% had multiple offers. So if you're looking for less competition, that can be a really good time to look for a home. And sellers, don't go on the market over the holiday weekend, right? The exact opposite is true for you. So, but so 15% of sellers got 5% or more over asking price over the last 30 days. That's a little lower number than King County. 26% of the contracts that got turned in were multiple offers over the last 7 days. So that's really recent data. That's the newest data that we've got. That's over the last 7 days. So only about a quarter of the sellers in Snohomish County are receiving multiple offers. And then we already talked about month supply of inventory has been increasing steadily. And so the other county that's interesting to me right now is Kitsap County. And they've got, and I know we've got Pierce too. Okay, we'll talk about Pierce, Dan. How about that?
Let's talk Pierce.
Okay, so 29% of the sellers got under contract within the first 7 days on the market if they listed that week before Memorial, or that week, the week of Memorial Day, right? And then 38% got under contract within the first 14 days on the market if they listed the 2 weeks before Memorial Day weekend. 8% of the sellers that closed over the last 30 days received 5% or more over list price. And again, these numbers are a little bit softer than King County, right? And then just over a quarter of the homes were pending with multiple offers over the last 7 days, so 27%. And they have 1.6 months supply of inventory, so slightly less than King County. And I will say Pierce County, I believe, has a pretty good market when compared to last year. So I don't think there's quite as much disparity as there is in King and Snohomish counties for 2024 versus 2025. But Kitsap is interesting too, Dan. I didn't send you that data, but they have the lowest month supply of inventory right now at 1.4. I think what's partly driving that market is it's a little lower price point, and there still are people that are able to work from home. And I think living on that side of the water is quite appealing. And my daughter works over there. So it's interesting to me to keep track of what's going on in Kitsap County. She gets a lot of people from out of area.
That's interesting. Yeah.
She had a call today from somebody from, I don't know if it's Florida or Texas or somewhere, but from quite far away that was coming out there to house hunt. So it's interesting. They have 32% of their sellers setting offer review dates, which is a pretty strong number. And 33% of them got off the market in the first 7 days. But again, all this data is impacted by the holiday weekend. But they did have 50% of sellers get off the market within the first 2 weeks. And that did include that first week, that week holiday weekend. So they have a pretty good market going over. They got 31%, same as King, 31% of their contracts turned in over the last 7 days were multiple offer situations. So, and she's running into that with her listings in some cases. And then other times, so the market seems to have slowed down quite a bit in that you can go a week without a showing. So that's not terrifying at all. And, did I talk to you guys about the showings last week? This was interesting. So get this data. This is for May.
Okay.
So the average number, let's see, the average number of showings per listing for the month of May, if you were on the market, 5.8 showings. That's the average, not 15, not 20, for the entire month. If you were on the market the entire month of May, the average number of showings was 5.8. Now, it took an average of 10 showings to get under contract. So you could see how it could take a seller quite some time if you missed that first week or two to get under contract. And let's just go back to King County. So King County, 7.6 showings per listing in the month of May. So that's be like per month, right? So for an entire month, 7.6 showings. So you can't expect 20 showings in a month. That's not going to happen. So don't get mad at your broker. Just saying. It took well, it's true though.
Yeah,
you're not because that's the average is 7.6. So right. The hot properties are going to get shown more. And if you hold it open, in some cases, doing open houses can really increase traffic. But on average in King County, it took 14 showings to get under contract. And some of that is the multiple offer situation and setting offer review dates, and then that skews that number higher, right? But what doesn't skew the number higher is the 7.6 on average. So in Snohomish County, it's 6.5 showings per month per listing. And that would be for the month of May, 6.5. When you think only 6 groups through for an entire month, you start to get terrified. That's how I feel when I take a listing, a little terrified sometimes. And it took 11 on average, 11 showings to get that house under contract. And that again is an average. And so this is not 2024. This is not 2020, early 2022 or 2021. The market, even though we still are experiencing multiple offers, it is not like it was. Mm-hmm. It is, and for sellers, they've got to be super realistic, and they better get that pricing, and don't think you're going to take care of deferred maintenance after you're on the market. It doesn't work like that. You got to take care of it up front, and buyers expect that. There's too many sellers out there that will go the distance,
the extra mile.
They will get it. The extra mile. They will do it right. And they'll get staged, and they'll put their money where their mouth is, so that they can reap the rewards at the end of the rainbow, So, and I see it happen over and over again. That house in Lake Forest Park, it showed so beautifully, and the seller was willing to stage it. The stager did a great job. The sellers prepared it properly, and of course, we had a windstorm the night before we went live. And so we had all these little branches all over the yard and the sidewalk and the roof. And we just had everything cleaned up. So, my first call was to the seller and said, do you have anybody that can pick up all these sticks? But that one did show beautifully. We did end up having about 50 groups through, including dedicated showings and the open houses that I held for 4 days in a row. And I did that to make sure we got a lot of people in there, and we did end up with 3 offers. And we did end up setting an offer review date. And it was in Lake Forest Park. So to be fair, it was a great location. So, but you can't miss that mark. Had we started higher with that price, I don't think we would have gotten the activity we did. So
worked out perfect. Yeah, it worked out perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. McKees Beach is a whole nother scenario. Well, 703 square feet, little beach cottage, no water view except from the backyard. Cute as a button. Two bedrooms just around the corner from the most beautiful beach in Washington. I swear.
Well, there's a lucky buyer out there that's just waiting for that little gem.
You guys don't know about McKees Beach because it's private. And that's what I was telling my seller yesterday, is that no one knows about McKees Beach because they haven't been down there, because it's a private road getting there. Right. So people are scared, and there's all these signs along the way, It's almost like you're afraid you're going to be shot or something if you go down there, Keep saying private, no beach access. And when you get down there, and it's the most beautiful beach ever. If you've ever been to Kayak Point Regional Park there, their beach hooks right up to that.
Well, I'll tell you what, if anywhere on the signs they say, this means you, like private access, no trespassing, this means you. Yes. That means that they mean business right there, So.
Yeah. Everybody that I talk to that comes down, and doesn't actually live down there, they get nervous about being there. But the beach is just so incredible. And I just don't think people realize that those houses are down on the, it's a little bit rocky. They're not, it's pebbly right in front of where my client's house is across the street. But it's much more sandy, just like at the end of the community. But it is just, the water's right there. Like, you can't build that close to the water these days. And so it's really, really spectacular. There's some places on Camino that, can get sort of similar feel, but this is west facing. And so the whales come in there. It's a really super deep bay in there. So you get a lot of whales and sea creatures. You can go crabbing right out in front there, and it's just 2 boat launches. It's just, there's a lot of cool stuff to it. And I keep thinking if the right person gets in there, I just got to get somebody out there. No one's looking for 703 square feet for 7.25. So, and I get it. It seems like a stretch, but it is really cool. And everybody says that walks in there, they're like, wow.
Whoa.
So they really go crazy when they get in there, but we just haven't had that many people through. We had a lot of neighbors and people that needed a bigger place. Had one of the neighbors down there that were renting a couple days ago, and I held it open on Friday. They came in, and if they had one less kid, it would have been theirs. But yeah, it might be a little tight for a family of 5. So anyway, so you got anything else for us today, Dan?
Just a couple real quick, couple business lending situations that have come up this week, and pretty cool stuff. Got a new lender that's got their direct business lender. They're not all that new, actually. They're really great to work with down in Portland, and they've got a new $400 million fund. So the beautiful part, they're really good on the construction side of things. So if you've got like an entire plat that needs development, right? The whole thing, soup to nuts, they can do that.
Wow.
Their
Cool.
terms are outstanding. They're really great to work with. They get the underwriting done quickly. So just kind of a shout out. It's a good environment.
What's the name of the company?
Denali Capital.
Denali.
Or Denali Commercial Lending, actually, I think.
Okay.
I think that's what it is. Great, great. I've spoken personally with the underwriters. The borrower gets an interview with the underwriter, and they look at the situation. Basically, does it make sense, right? And so
Right.
they do a fantastic job. So they really understand the nature of the business. Adult family care homes, for example, is one of the areas that they are really good at, as well as the construction lending. So it's an interesting area of the lending market, and so we're having fun with that. So anyway, yeah, it's pretty cool. So well, I guess without further ado, that pretty much does it from my end on this week.
Wraps it up.
That kind of wraps it up. We've got consumer prices coming out tomorrow, the inflation report. So that'll be interesting. I don't think it's going to have as big of an impact as it normally does, but we'll see. Maybe I'll be totally wrong. You never know. Maybe it'll be a big report. We'll see.
Yeah.
But it'll be out tomorrow, and so we'll just keep chugging along. We'll see what happens.
Okay. Well,
Very good.
And if you guys want to look at some homes, give me a call. Or if you had a house to sell, it's not a terrible time to sell. It's just not the utmost ideal. But if you need to sell, then of course it's the right time. So anyway, and if anybody's interested in Stats by Cat, my blog, shoot me a DM or text, and I'll hook you up.
Cool.
Okay.
Thanks, Kat.
All right. Thank you, Dan. Talk to you later.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Okay.